So, number one, you need to know the definition of this. And the definition of the law of demand is that the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, or the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. And that leads to a downward sloping demand curve. If you think about tickets to your favorite concert, a video game you'd like to purchase, any sort of consumer good that you enjoy buying, you will buy more if they are on sale, and you will buy less as the price goes up. So that is the demand curve. That is the law of demand. So there's no way around that. There's no options. Law of supply now, and this is where students trip up. You got to put on your producer hat. We're not talking about what it costs to make it. We're talking about what people are willing to pay. And the higher the price people are willing to pay, the higher the quantity supplied. So if your cost structure stays the same and people are willing to pay more for something, we're going to supply more. We're coming up on Easter, so Easter eggs, things like that, the prices are going up. People are willing to buy them. I have to put something in an Easter basket for my daughter. And that means that suppliers are going to make more and put more out on the market. So you end up with a curve that looks like this. People are willing to pay more and more and more. Suppliers jump into the market more and more and more. All right. If you aren't selling your product, so we're putting on our producer hat, what should you do to the price? So think about right now sweaters or sweatshirts. They're probably not selling very well as summer's coming up. So we would have to lower the price. The problem is you have an oversupply. So supply is above the market value. You lower your price. That is going to increase your quantity demanded because people are willing to buy a sweatshirt maybe for next year if you get the price low enough and you drop it. If you're always selling out of your product, what you could do with the price is, of course, raise it. So if your product is flying off the shelves, you can actually jack the price up because you are below equilibrium. If you increase the price, that's going to increase quantity demanded, and that would bring you back to equilibrium. So if you're off equilibrium, you want to adjust. Again, if you're always selling out, you have a shortage. Demand is above supply. If you're always having extra, you have a surplus. Supply is above demand. So take a look at where your curves are to see what you need to do there. All right. Now, I want you to pause the video here and graph supply and demand and show what happens to price and quantity. I want two graphs, one that shows an increase in demand, one that shows an increase in supply. When demand increases, you'll notice that you get an entirely new curve. When we use the word demand as opposed to quantity demanded, we get an entirely new curve, and that means that quantity is going to increase. You'll have more, and price is going to increase. So when demand increases, both quantity and price increase. And that makes sense. You can charge more for something people want more of, and you can sell even more. So if you think about Mercer basketball tickets, the quantity people demand has increased because they went to the Final Four this year. Not the Final Four, but the NCAA tournament. And the price that you can sell them at has increased as well. When you graph supply, similar idea, you're going to see that when supply increases, price is actually going to decrease, but of course the quantity, because that is the quantity supplied, is going to increase. I like to think about produce here. I like to make jelly. This is the time of year when berries are in season, and so the supply increases, but grocery store owners have to drop the price because the supply increases and they can't sell all of the new supply without it going bad on the shelf, so they have to drop the price. All right, let's look at some supply and demand questions. If people are willing to pay more for Braves merchandise, the baseball season has started, maybe they've started off to a great clip, what happens to supply for their goods? So let's graph this out. Here is my very attractive price and quantity axis. Drawing on a mouse pad is harder than it looks. And here we're going to have a demand curve. Here we're going to have a supply curve. All right, so what we've said is people are willing to pay more. So we're going to have an increase in demand. People are willing to pay more for the same product. And if we have an increase in demand, what we're going to have, if it's asking about supply, is a move along the supply curve. So when you move one curve, you have a change in the quantity of another curve. So an increase in demand causes an increase in quantity supplied of that product. So a demand for Braves baseball caps means that people are willing to pay more for the same product, which means that suppliers will supply more. So you'll end up here. So quantity supplied would increase. What causes a change in quantity demanded? A change in price. So if you are reading a problem and you see that price has changed, I really want you to think quantity demanded. Price goes with quantity, okay? And demand means that regardless of the price, you're willing to buy more. So right now I'm willing to buy more strawberries because they are on sale. The change in price, the supply has gone up. And the price has dropped, which means if you look, we move along my demand curve. So I'm going from here to here. I have a change in quantity demanded. If strawberries had stayed, say, $4 a pint, I wouldn't be buying them. But right now they're 2 for $5 or $2.50 a pint, and I'm happy to buy them at that price. So I buy more strawberries because the price changed. If the price had stayed the same, it's not that I want strawberries no matter what, it's that I want them because of a change in price. So if you see a change in price, you need to say to yourself, this must be a change in quantity demanded. Very, very important that you understand that concept. All right, change in quantity supplied, and we just saw a graph of that. So we have price here, quantity here. Here is my demand curve. Always remember demand slopes down. Here is my supply curve. So if we're going to have a change in quantity supplied, we're actually going to have to move along this curve. So that may be due to a change in demand. So I've got to move this way, which means that my demand has, in this case, dropped or gone down. So if you take a look, you can see that. And a good example here, Justin Bieber tickets. People, regardless of price, people just aren't as interested in Justin Bieber anymore. So demand for Justin Bieber tickets has gone down. That means the quantity supplied of Justin Bieber tickets will also go down. He'll be playing smaller stadiums, fewer tour dates, things like that. So changes in demand are what drive changes in quantity supplied. You put on your producer hat. If people don't want your product anymore, you're going to make less of it. And if you go back to even a PPC, you'll probably shift your production to something else that people do want. Otherwise, you'll be out of business. What are the determinants of demand? Pause for a second and talk to a neighbor about the kind of things that would make you want to buy something more or less. Those are the determinants of demand. All right, change in price of a complementary good. Can you name 2 complementary goods? Shoes and shoelaces, peanut butter and jelly. So if peanut butter is more expensive, we can expect that we will sell less jelly. If jelly goes on sale, we can expect that we'll sell more peanut butter. So these 2 things are complementary goods. Change in price of a substitute good, maybe Coke and Pepsi. If Coke becomes more expensive and Pepsi does not, then we can expect that we'll sell more Pepsi. Some of you might never step over, but some people are savvy shoppers and will pick up the Pepsi on sale instead. Change in income, this is pretty obvious. The bigger your income, the more goods you can demand. The smaller your income, the fewer goods you can demand. There's one exception to this, and that's the idea of an inferior good. This will be a good that you buy when your income is low and you actually increase your demand for it. An example for that would be like ramen noodles or Campbell's soup cans. Yum. Change in population. More people, more demand. Fewer people, less demand. You knew that. Change in taste. This is the thing that advertising is constantly trying to get at. They want to change your taste to make you want something more or less. So popularity is going to adjust that. And I think you're very familiar with this because this to me is the one that we use the most often. Finally, change in expectations. If we hear, for example, that it's going to be an extremely rainy summer, we might demand what kind of goods? Umbrellas, raincoats, and we might demand less sunscreen, for example. So expectations, as Easter's coming up, our demand for Easter chocolate increases. The determinants of supply. So let's put our producer hat on. What is going to make you produce more of a good or less of a good? So if you run a cupcake factory, for example, what's going to enable you to produce more of that product? The biggest thing is changing cost of production. So if you run a cupcake factory, if flour becomes more expensive, you're going to have to produce less cupcakes because your budget hasn't changed. Flour is on sale, you can produce more cupcakes with the same budget. Change in expectation. So it's coming up on Easter. You expect that you'll sell a lot of candy eggs based on what you did last year. Are you sure the demand is there? No. Everyone might want fresh carrots this year because of a health craze, but that would be the expectation based on years past. A tax. Look at what a tax is going to do to supply. So here we have our supply curve. We have our demand curve. And if you have a tax on a specific good, those are called excise taxes, like a tax on gasoline or cigarettes. It's going to decrease your supply. Remember, when we decrease supply, we move it to the left. If you aren't sure which way you move it, I want you to watch what happens along this quantity axis here. See how quantity decreases? And of course, it drives the price up. In your college classes, we'll actually say that a tax shifts supply up, but for our class, I always say shifts it to the left. A subsidy is going to go the other way. So a subsidy is, hoping I could erase there, is when you give money to encourage someone to produce something. So here's your demand curve, your supply curve. It's going to increase your supply. And a subsidy increases supply because now it's gotten cheaper to do it. The government's sort of given you a head start. And you should remember this from your trade terms. Right now we're subsidizing solar panels to encourage clean energy, and that's increasing the supply of American-made solar panels and making them at an artificially cheaper cost. So that's increasing quantity demanded, of course. Biggest thing though that you'll notice, you may see a question about tax or subsidy, but cost of production is what most commonly affects supply.